we forced this issue. We kept forcing NATO all the way to Eastern Europe, and Putin just got tired of it. He said, listen, I do not want missiles on my border from the United States of America. It'd be like Russia coming to Mexico and putting missiles in Mexico. I understand what he's talking about. You can tell Putin's on top of his game. One thing he said that it really rung a bell is the propaganda media machine over here. They sell anything they possibly can to go after Russia. They can't win. It's not going to happen. Somebody needs to negotiate. Donald Trump will have it over with in a matter of weeks.
There you have it. Senator Tommy Tuberville, the senator from Florida, well, technically Alabama, but lives in Florida, sharing the precise Russian talking points over and over. It's now been over 2 years since the brutal invasion of Ukraine, and they remain defiant, even as the Republican Party here does everything it can to help Vladimir Putin. To mark the anniversary, the 2-year anniversary, I want to have a short talk, which will be a new series of things we do here for Odd Democracy, with journalist Tim Mak. He's been on the show before. He's based in Ukraine, and he's been covering the war up close and literally personally since it started. So I'm so excited to welcome Tim to the show. Let's get going. Tim, man, it's so good to connect with you on this important and sad anniversary. I mean, I can't believe it was in 2 years. You always open your morning updates the same way. I follow you adamantly, just every day. And you start every day off with "Good morning to readers. Kyiv remains in Ukrainian hands." And in those early days, that wasn't always a sure thing, And now I feel like here at the 2-year anniversary, it might not be again. I mean, we're in danger. I guess I want to start. I opened the interview with a clip of Tommy Tuberville, essentially parroting Putin's talking points. And what do you think when you see U.S. lawmakers like Tuberville and J.D. Vance parroting these Russian talking points that Ukraine can't win and that we should stop funding them?
Yeah, this 2-year anniversary mark is a great time to reflect on exactly how did we get into this bizarre space, right? 2 years ago, when the full-scale invasion first erupted and Russia decided that it would break all established, international norms and try to take territory by force, start a war over it, over some historical grievances that aren't even legitimate. Yeah. Everyone, whether inside Ukraine, outside Ukraine, was generally pretty agreed upon the fact that Russia was the aggressor. Ukraine was defending the values we can all agree on, those of democracy and a free people trying to make their own decisions.
Yep.
And now here we are 2 years later, and what Putin has really relied on this entire time as his strategic thinking is that if they keep going long enough, they will be able to kind of cut off enough people who are not that interested in this particular topic. They'll be able to cut off some other people for various other reasons due to Russian propaganda, Russian talking points, folks who are more isolationists, folks who can be convinced on A, B, and C, people like Tucker Carlson.
Right.
That over time, people just won't care enough or will even be able to be persuadable to be against the Ukrainian cause. It's a really sad and a really notable point, in the war right now, that even as a democratic country is going through it and seeing tremendous sacrifice in blood, sweat, buns, and money and time, and I see it every day, that the rest of the world, in particular the United States, can't seem to live up to its promise to support Ukraine till the end. I mean, this has tremendous long-term effects that we could be going into a scenario where the United States, which had until this point had been looking at a strategic victory and weakening one of its major strategic opponents, is now coming into a situation where they could be facing a strategic defeat, in that Ukrainians feel, and will certainly feel, epically betrayed if the United States doesn't follow through with its word and deliver aid. And many Ukrainians will actually forget senators. Ukrainians may be vulnerable to the Russian talking point or the Chinese talking point. You can't trust the United States, because when they say they're going to be there for you, they're really going to be there for you only as long as their attention span allows. And they don't have any sort of long-term strategic vision. You can't trust their word. And frankly speaking, if the United States doesn't follow through with what it said it would do, then there's a point there, isn't there?
Right. I mean,
And
you
this is
can't
a real
argue it. I mean,
this is a
here we
real
are.
risk. This is a real risk. This is a real
Yeah.
risk. And so the decision hasn't been made, but every day it seems like the United States is getting closer to a position where there will be no aid forthcoming, and those promises will not be met. And that's a very dangerous day indeed, because it has implications not only for Ukraine, it has implications all across Europe and in Asia, for example, places where the United States has made commitments. And there's this kind of siren song of authoritarians saying, you can't trust them, you can't trust them. That's the real risk here.
Yeah, and you follow closely. Obviously, you write the counteroffensive. I read it, avidly. You just came out with. I mean, here we are, 2 years. I think no one expected on those early days they would survive that. I mean, if you, it is easy to it's easy to forget those early days. And as we talk about the situation out here today, people have doubted Ukraine from the start, right? I mean, they thought it would fall. Our own military assessed they'd fall in 3 days. Everyone thought it was going to be a quick battle, but the Ukrainians fought, and I think no one expected that. And you just published a fascinating story on the counteroffensive in depth about the battle for Kyiv and just how, I mean, I'm reading this thing and just how close it was at times and what saved the day and what may have turned that back. Take us back to those early days here on the anniversary of that first battle north of Kyiv and what you guys found in your extensive reporting on that key battle.
Yeah, so we spent the better part of a year gathering eyewitness accounts and talking to people who fought at this epic battle, this really important. I consider it the most important battle of the war so far. It's a battle
Yeah.
called the Battle of Antonov Airfield, and it took place northwest of Kyiv, about 60 kilometers away from the city center.
Yeah.
And what was so strategic and important there was that there was an airfield there that was normally used for cargo and flight testing, a really long airfield.
Yeah.
And the Russian strategic objective, or their objective that day, was to take this airfield and then use it to bring in about 18 huge cargo planes with 1,000 troops on it, armored vehicles, and use that as an air bridge so they wouldn't have to get bogged down, as they ultimately did get bogged down,
Right.
on the roads for north of Kyiv. So the story that we wrote on the counteroffensive, which you can read at counteroffensive.news,
Yep.
is all about how that happened, how the Ukrainians were able to deny Russian special operations forces. These Ukrainian forces were non-combat troops, not really meant for any sort of airfield defense. They fought off the VDV, the Russian elite airborne troops, using nothing more than small arms against armored helicopters. There's one anecdote in our reporting about how one soldier on the Ukrainian side ran out of ammo and was shuttling ammo to and from the airfield as the battle was going on, and without any rounds in his rifle to fire, he spots some Russian soldiers at the side of the airfield, and he just hits the gas in his black BMW and runs them over. That's how
BMW for the win.
That's how desperate that.
They should do a commercial. They should do a commercial. BMW, not just fast the road, also runs down Russian soldiers.
But I think that says something about
Yeah.
whether, and here's the lesson for me in that, and how that applies to today, is that the United States and the West can choose to support Ukraine or not. There was a quote that I heard early in the full-scale invasion that as long as there's a 12-year-old boy with a plastic butter knife in Ukraine, there's going to be resistance. And you can, but no one wants, I don't think anyone with any sort of conscience wants this to be that kind of resistance. And the United States is an opportunity to to have a major strategic win by making sure that it's not 12-year-old boys with plastic butter knives. It's military-age males with the appropriate armored vehicles, drones, and missiles that they need to fight back this Russian invasion.
Yeah, and without that, then again, I want to circle back what we said at the beginning is, what is America's reputation in the world? What is the West? What is NATO's reputation in the world if we allow this to continue, allow them to fail? So bringing it back to today, and you said it, right? You kind of touched on it. Ukrainians had to retreat from a key city last week. Reports are they're running out of ammunition. I mean, we've burned up all the money. We're trying to find clever ways, giving money to allies who then give their own equipment to the Ukrainians. I mean, I'll give Biden, the administration, the Department of Defense credit, and State Department credit for trying to find clever ways to get around the obtuseness of our own Congress every way legally possible. We're not going to do a Reagan, I imagine. I hope not, but here we are. But then again, maybe. So where is it today? And I think that's probably a great place to stop our conversation. What happens today? Where are things at today? And how desperate is the situation? And where do they go from here?
I'll make a couple points. The pessimism in Ukraine is unlike anything I've seen at any point until now. And the reason is that, there's the physical trauma that's happening on the front lines.
Yeah.
Soldiers are coming back either in body bags or without, limbs,
Yeah.
desperately wounded. And we've done a lot of reporting on, for example, how wild and dangerous some of these frontline evacuations are. We embedded with one of these ambulances from eastern Ukraine into central Ukraine, where the hospital hubs are. So there's the physical trauma side, but I can't overstate the grind mentally and psychologically that 2 years now, going into the third year of war, that takes on people. That it's both cumulative and cascading. It travels from person to person. This kind of sadness, this kind of grief, this kind of all the images and the videos and the stories you've heard, that all collects. And people that I met very early in the invasion, who I thought were just rock solid people, could never break. I'm starting to see them crack, and it's just a horrific thing to see how this wears on you and wears on people around you. That's one of the major things. I think from a military perspective, in order to do appropriate defensive or offensive operations, you need to have a baseline amount of ammunition.
Yeah.
From what I'm hearing on the front lines, they don't have it. They don't have the tools they need, basic things. And it's hard not to point the finger at the United States. Like I said, the will to fight is there. I mean, the will to fight is as great as any other fighting force I've seen.
Yeah.
So that it's not a matter of motivation. It's a matter of whether they have the equipment and the resources they need to execute. And when it comes to that, I think the Ukrainians over time, they're going to need an explanation for why this happened if it does go south. And I don't think they're going to blame themselves. I think they're going to blame the broken promises from folks in the West. And that's going to have terrible long-term effects on Ukraine's relationship with the United States and other countries.
Well, and I think other countries are watching. There are countries who are in the far, the countries that do border Russia, the countries that border China, and even South Korea. They're watching and saying, when we have the will to fight, do our allies have the will to support us? Historically, we have, but when you see a Republican Party, especially, and we can't say Congress. I get mad when I see stories like, well, Congress. No, it's not Congress. It's a handful of Republicans who've decided they want to, for reasons that are completely inexplicable to me, carry Russian water. And it's going to cost lives. So, well, Tim, I appreciate your time, man. I know you're busy. I think you're traveling back to Ukraine again. Most importantly, where can our viewers find you, and where can they reach out and talk to you and see your incredible writing?
Yeah, they can reach out at www.counteroffensive.news, and that's where we put out a twice weekly newsletter where we go deep into human stories of folks undergoing the news, going through the news. And that's how we try to break through this idea of, so-called Ukraine fatigue by writing these fascinating, deeply reported stories.
Wow. Well, appreciate you, man. Stay safe over there. I know I've talked to you at moments when it isn't safe. We've exchanged messages when things are kind of blowing up. So Man, thanks for everything you do. It's been great. For those viewers, Tim and I have known each other for, I don't know, a decade now, I think, right? And here we are in a different world. So, man, thanks for everything you do, and keep up the fight.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, brother. Cheers. Great talk with Tim. I've known him for, like I said, as I mentioned at the end of the interview, I've known him for a long time, and this is a key moment for us. We cannot allow a few Republicans and others in Congress to undermine what needs to be done to save our allies, help our allies to defend against an abominable, evil man, a dictator. So, thanks for joining us. As again, I'm Fred Wellman, host of On Democracy. This has been On Democracy Short Take. You can catch our show on the MeidasTouch Network every Friday night at 11. Be sure to catch new episodes. We got great ones coming up. Incredible list of guests. People are watching, so I hope you'll join us. That's On Democracy, the FP Wellman, right on the MeidasTouch Network every Friday night. Stay in the fight, folks. Democracy's at hand. Thank you.